Hello, everybody. Welcome to Om School Live. We're going to bring on Master Spiritual Teacher GP Walsh in just a moment. But today, because we are talking about death and other happy thoughts, I thought I'd kick it off with a little bit of why we're talking about this, what we are talking about, because it's not the common conversation we have typically been hearing these days about death and mourning or grieving. Today, I wanted to talk about dying and the details in dying. And this is why, I'm going solo just for a minute here, is because 2 mornings ago, I woke up. I was awake and then I kind of fell back into sleep. And in this miniature fast dream, I was told that I had 30 minutes to live. I was dying in 30 minutes. And I thought, oh man, what am I going to do here? What have I not prepared for? What are my steps? What have I prepared for? But now I've got to actually take action. I've got 30 minutes. And here's one thing that really came up. And I thought, wow, this is a mess, because the thoughts were, who am I going to call? Who am I going to call first? If I call that person first and then later on they found out that I called that person first, and they might be upset. So it was a lot of managing, like, when I'm gone. So what can I do to best prepare? And how long do I talk to people for? And why do I need to call them? What would I say? What needs to be said? Does anything need to be said? What about just goodbye, or I love you, or nothing? Or what if you don't? So all these questions came up. And in this dream that I was having, I started actually, because I don't know if you guys know this, but when you're sleeping in that final sleep, we ourselves are kind of paralyzed, but it's all building up so that when we do wake up, we have that heart, heart stuff. And so I reached out immediately to GP and I said, GP, let's do a show not on after, like, mourning and grieving, but let's talk about what dying is so we feel good about it. Can we feel good about it? That'll be a question. How can we help others feel good about it in general and about ourselves? How can somebody who loves you feel good about you dying? And how can you best prepare and have those conversations? Does self-inquiry come into this process, or is it something we just have with others? So let me bring on our Master Spiritual Teacher, GP Walsh, to Om School Live with us here. Hello.
Hello.
Ah, you can see my conundrum.
The most difficult thing is Facebook doesn't have a status for transitioning to the other world.
No, you can only leave your account to someone else.
Yeah, what are you going to do? A status. I'm happy today. I'm in Cincinnati. They don't have a status so you can go leaving the planet.
How are you feeling today? Dead. No.
Yes, I'm dying.
My phone does have the coffin icon though. But so I'm going to bring this up too, and I don't know, maybe she will be watching this or not, but I have a really dear friend who has said goodbye, to 2 husbands already, and there was a lot left for her to figure out, to still do after this. So there's been quite the conversation between her and I about, wow, I wish this was done, or wow, what do I do in this, and how can I honor that person's memory while I'm still living and need to do the things that I need to do. Mm-hmm. And so, GP, in the beautiful light letter that you wrote, you really brought what death, not dying, what dying and death is truly, and how you put a really beautiful spin on it. I would love for you to start there so that we can actually, because some people don't even want to have a conversation about death and dying because they're freaked out over it. Like, forget the mourning part. So
yes, we are freaked out about it. Well, mainly because it really, what it is the fear of the unknown. Most people assume that there's something else. There's just something in us that innately knows that's not really the end. Right? And then we try to imagine what's after that. And what we imagine that is after this life is something similar to this life. It's going to be heaven, and you can eat all the pizza and beer you want, but not get fat or have a hangover, right? Whatever your particular version of heaven might be, we're going to get to see the people that we left behind. We're all going to be reunited in one big happy family. And these are all ways in which we try to kind of buffer the fact that we really don't know. Right? that you are leaving things behind. And what I like to point out is that that particular transition, while it's a rather dramatic one, right, is not that much different than what we've experienced millions and millions of times in our life. When when the 5-year-old goes to grade school, and over time one set of friends completely disappears and you have no more contact with them, and another set of friends is there. Um, when you get into adolescence, the things you're interested in, you don't play with trucks anymore, right? Or dolls or whatever your choice was. You're playing with something else. And it all through life, there are these transitions, these transformations that take place. And you could literally think of them as a death of oneself and the birth of another. So when I look at that, to me, it's not a big stretch to just assume that something goes beyond this, right? And that there was something prior to this. This was kind of a moment. And if you look at it within the context of cosmic time, it's but a blip, right? It's a barely visible blip, right? And so if we would come to terms with it, if we would be willing to just ponder it as something that is inherent in life and not opposed to it, right? Everything on the planet lives by dying, right? One thing has to die to feed another, and sometimes it can look quite cruel, and it is. Nature isn't always pleasant, and every cell in your body is dying, right? It's millions every second, right? So the process of life is the process of this continual cycle of birth and death. So we see it like that, and we see that cycle of beginning and endings happens on the microscopic level, it happens on the cellular level, it happens on a cosmic level, right? A mountain has a beginning and an end, right? Although it's just a very long period of time, a star has a beginning and an end. It's just an extended period of time. But within the star are millions of bits whose beginning and ending are immeasurably small. So you see, it's more fractal, right? The beginning and ending is life. That's why it's a flow and not a static thing. A static thing can't survive. And if we really give ourselves pause and allow ourselves to ponder that and step out of just the very limited model that most religions have dealt with, which is the death of the human body, and look at it in the big picture, a completely different kind of conversation would emerge. In Buddhism, well, particularly Tibetan Buddhism, pondering death and death meditations are a profound and integral practice to Buddhism, to just come to terms with the impermanence of everything you experience. And that's the fear. Because with the impermanence, one thing is going to end, and the truth is everything is going to
If people and when people could get comfortable with that, like, all right, I get it. Okay. And then we
end.
have this reconciliation. All right, deal. Okay, I'm going to die. But then there's this other thing that comes in. All right. But I would like to know, I'd like to decide when. I'd like to make sure I have this done. I'd like to make sure, there's this control factor that we want. And
Mhm.
because a lot of times what I hear when people are grieving another's death, they might go, yeah, I get it, but it was too soon. It's not fair, and there's this not peaceful place of, but I didn't get to figure, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for them to go. I wasn't ready for me to go.
Yeah.
Where are we left with? What's the struggle there?
You'll never be ready. It's going to come. It's going to come. When you die, do you think you're not going to have plans for the future?
Right.
Of course you are. Of course you are. That's just part of human life. We're going to, well, what's the next thing? Or at least what's going to be for dinner? What's a little project I can do, or a craft, or, it's going to be harvest time for the zucchini in 2 weeks, right? There's always going to be something. It's like a dream. Dreams just kind of end, right? They don't tie themselves up in neat little bows.
Yeah.
It just ends, right? Because it's just a story anyway. It's just Your life is a story. It's a story, one story among an innumerable number of stories. And you've already experienced more stories than you can count.
Yes. Yeah, I love that one. I remember us just having the show plans, goals versus plans, and plans can change. Goals, we want them to be accomplished, completed, done, check mark,
Yeah.
and with plans. And so with this, because we're dying all the time, but we just have to have a different. We have to come to peace with that word and what it means to us, and with the self inquiry process. Is it about coming to peace with, all right, I might not finish that plan, goal, I might not get there, but just having some is it because if it's the unknown that we have so much fear about and it's being too early or too soon, what is the reconciling that needs to be done?
Well, the first reconciling needs to be done is to find that which is not impermanent, which doesn't come and go. That's
Oh,
step one.
okay.
And everything you know, everything you believe, everything you touch, feel, and sense, everyone you know, every experience you have, every plan you make is impermanent. Because the goal dies when it's fulfilled. There's no more goal, right? And that's the whole point, right? You want the goal to end. You want it to cease being a goal and begin being a completion, right? And then of course a new goal will emerge. So what then is the self-inquiry is simply noticing that while everything that's gone on in my life, uh, be it in the mental level, the emotional level, the physical level, the experiential level, everything I've ever done, thought, said, and experienced comes and goes, something hasn't. There's been something there aware of the comings and going. If there was nothing there aware of the comings and goings, it too would be gone.
Right. Yes.
And of course, that something that's aware of them is you. You're the one that notices that it's coming and going. We speak here about events in our lives, right? That, oh, this came and then it went, and then this came and then this went. Well, what was there that watched it come, watched it dance its little dance, and then go? There is something that is self-evident that isn't coming and going. Now, if we dive deep enough into that, we find that that is the immortality of your being, and it's you. You don't come and go. Your experience comes and goes. And even when this entire story of my life goes, I'm still going to be there. Not as GP, because GP was just a temporary form that emerged, but as the nameless and the formless. And there may be another name and form that is that a little bubble of a form that appears in this infinite ocean of the formless. But that's where it has to start. If you grasp that that's it, your fear of death disappears because you can't die. And we have evidence of that. People say, well, you can't know what happens after you die. Well, the specifics, no. I can't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So the specifics of it, I've got to guess, right? Based on my past experience, I extrapolate that tomorrow's going to be similar to today, right?
Yes.
So I could do the same thing based on my experience of having never, ever changed or come and gone through this entire period of my life. I think I can use the same logic and extrapolate and say, maybe I'm not going to go anywhere. Maybe I will simply watch this fall away. And then I will be in this place where the question, who am I, becomes rather immediate.
Yes, it does. It's not even where, because you won't need to know where. The where doesn't matter at that point. We're assuming.
Correct.
Once,
Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no time. There's no events taking place. There's no space because there's no other objects other than.
I mean, let's go
that place
with
in
you.
between is quite fascinating.
Let's go with you for a second. GP's body is no more, and now you're you, the permanent, forever, the eternal.
That which is animating this body. Yeah.
Yes, the essence which is animating its body, and is I guess this is why it doesn't not matter, but we can't control what other people think about us passing. Like you, if I'm like, "Hey, GP, come on, you just left. We didn't get prepared here." But that's up to me to figure that out. So that once the essence is there, you can. It's not your job, I guess, to prepare others for your passing.
Well, the way I prepare others for the passing is to get you in touch with that which is not coming and going. At which point you'll stop looking for me as a body and
Right.
find me as the ever-present spirit. I am the sense I am that is in you. So I'm not going anywhere because you're not going anywhere.
Right. So I didn't need a phone call from you because I'd be like, "Hey, let's chat with you now."
It really does. It really does work that way. You know, Ramana was, as Ramana was, it was obvious he was on in his last days. Um, there was a lot of, there was a lot of some mourning and some tears being shed around the ashram. He says, "What are you crying about? I'm not going anywhere." But it's just, we are just so used to thinking of ourselves and others as the body because the senses cannot perceive the animating spirit.
Well,
But you are the animating spirit. You're not the body. You're no more you are no more, the body is no more the being than the radio is the music.
yes. I love that word, the animating spirit. That's like
Yeah.
that's
And that spirit is singular. It's not multiple. There's only one of them.
right.
So it's not even spirits. That's another thing that people imagine. My spirit is going to go someplace. My individual soul is going to go someplace. My soul has a journey, right? People talk
Yeah.
about their soul journey. It's still it's an idea. It's taken the body and made it more ephemeral, but there's still a person there. There's still an individualized, localized being. But
That's
in
perfect.
fact, there isn't. There's only one consciousness, and each one of us is simply a bubble of awareness with a point of perception within that singular consciousness.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So, yes, I'm excited now. So that's a lot of times that we do really we want to put a body, an invisible body, to the spirit. So let's just say my mom passed or 10 years ago, and I was very cool with it. I was flowing around doing her thing, but I still put a identity to it.
Yes,
And we might even have had conversations like, "Wow, mom's really quite the soul. She showed up, or she did this," and or we would like we still individualized her
yes,
energy, and it comforted. It's comforting.
yeah, it does.
It,
It does, and it's not completely off, right?
okay.
Because there is an energetic sense. There's an energetic feeling about every single form. Your cats have have a character, right?
Too.
Every living thing, and actually even inanimate things, have a certain energetic signature about it. The only problem is we mistake that energetic signature as an individualized entity and not the vibration of the one. It is a singular moment of an instantiation of the one. It is not an independently functioning entity. And so we see that's how we see bodies as an independently functioning entity. And then we imagine a soul or a spirit or disembodied beings or spirit guides or angels or as if they're independent entities. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they don't exist as a self-existent entity. They are simply yet another vibrational frequency of the one.
That was good. Yes. Yes. That is so are is our mind trained to make it individual? That's you, you're in a box, I can see you, or is it just we've just accepted it culturally?
It all arises from the very first thought, and all the cultures have arisen from that very first thought. the one upon which all of this hangs, and that is the thought, I am the body. The moment I am the body, the mind now is defining everything in terms of the form, self and other, and every object in terms of the form, which means that every body becomes an individualized entity. Everything becomes an individualized entity. And the fact that it isn't is what Buddha kept referring to when he said no self. That's what he meant. Not no existence, but no thing has an independent, inherent existence. It is all the manifestation of that one, which he defined as emptiness or shunyata.
Mm.
So you could call it the self, you could call it emptiness, you could call it Buddha nature, you could call it Christ consciousness, you could call it Shiva being, whatever you want, whatever. These are all names for this indescribable one. Because how can you describe one? If there's one and nothing else, what do you use to describe it?
Right. There's no comparison, no anything.
There's nothing to compare and describe. There's just okay, silence. Silence is what describes it. That's it. That's the only thing that can.
When you said about the no self, and it's a vibration. We're holding that. I don't want to say unique almost. I'm afraid of like isolating it. But if it's
Well, it isn't unique.
okay, good.
It
Okay,
is,
so
it is unique. It's so subtle. It is unique. It is
okay.
simply not a self-existent entity. It is a unique vibration of the one source of all.
Like you're like on
And
last
every
week's show
single one.
with
Sorry?
like on last week's show when it is our body, but our finger will feel different, have a different vibration than the knee, than the
Abs-
okay, yes.
absolutely.
So when we do pass and this body is on its way, um, do you think, or do you know, or can we say this, that unique vibration, that's what we might be perceiving if we think, oh, I feel so and so, my loved one around still.
Yes,
That we're
it'll continue. It'll continue to reverberate for a while, just like anything else does. And the closer you were, the deeper that reverberation, because that energy is now reverberating in you. Right? Of
yes.
course, the two have merged. They've formed a bond, which is kind of a mutual thing. Which is, I mean, it's just infinitely layered because every individual has their signature. But you take the two together and you make a third entity, a third set of vibrations. That's a combination of the two, right? The flute is one thing, but you have 18 flutes and 28 violins, and you got something else. And you add, right? I mean, this is how it's just these infinite layers, and every single one of them is creating yet another one. What you would call you, this one body, is how many countless vibrations of minuscule little cells are going on, each one an individual within the whole. It's just, I mean, it's just mind blowing. It's just, all I can do is go blah blah blah, blah. You just
Yeah, the combinations of the lottery, so many, there's multiples, you're always a winner. The with that, and I just want to thank everybody first of all for joining us. You are here with Ohm School Live, so we're in class time, and we're going to be getting, I see some questions coming in, some comments and some stuff. So in less than 10 minutes, 10 minutes is our goal here, we'll be going over to those questions and reading through them. But still on that one, then I'm finding some of my own peace here is student Lisa, feeling that peace from that dream, because I was really feeling the earthly duties that are being called upon, saying, okay, well, I this body is animated with this essence, but if I'm pulling this together and having this conversation at this class time with you, is that vibration will show up. It exists. It just exists. It's already there. It's not going to go. It's impermanent. No, it is permanent. And so when I didn't call somebody I missed out, I didn't call them, and I'm gone, that if they were to tune in, to feel, just to listen, that they could still connect or experience that
Well,
essence.
that's what. Yeah, that's what's the difference if the body's here or not? You're never connecting with the body. You're connecting with an energy. And
Oh,
our experience of the energy is always our own. I mean, you're actually experiencing yourself. It's always you, right? You don't experience another because there isn't one. You experience the vibration as yourself. This is what they call empathy. It's not empathy, right? It's simply you are vibrating in harmony with another vibration. They're intermingling. And
mm,
it's the problem is because we keep thinking of the me or the you as the body. That which is aware of the other is not the body. Body is not is not sentient. Consciousness is the awareness. It's the point of cognition. And it's everything is there. Everything is experienced there. So we think we're experiencing another and we're not. That's just the concept of it. Like when you look at everybody's looking at their screen right now, right? And what you see, you think, okay, I'm seeing something on the other side of the room, but you're not. The only light you're seeing is right here on your eyeball. The only thing you ever see is right here. I don't care if you're looking out of the night sky at a star it's 100 million light years away, and it took it 100 million years to get here. You're seeing it here. You never experience anything except here. And then we have all sorts of ideas about what we are experiencing, and and we project those ideas onto what it is we are experiencing, and that projection is based on the thought I am the body, so I think I'm experiencing another body, but
right.
I'm only ever experiencing myself. But the self that is me experiencing and the self that is you experiencing is the same self.
Right. Yes.
The individualization is an individualized vibration of the same self.
Mm, okay. Wow. See, it's actually making death and dying the same as living. Like you just tied it right. It's the same thing almost. And now the light letter makes even more sense to me. If everybody has not read that, please read that.
It's on the blog too. You can just go to gpwalsh.com, and it's a blog. It's the latest blog as well.
Yes, you'll want to if so if that was interesting to you, or you caught it but you didn't, or you totally get it and just want to review it. Yes, please read that. That was yeah, it does have that beautiful sense to it. It really, gosh, it makes our job seem so different than how we live life. Like I think about often, the topics that we have here on Homeschool Live or that we discuss or in self-inquiry. And then it's like living in this world, it's just it feels so different, like almost like so not wrong. I don't want to say that, but it feels like there's a resistance constantly when there is really truly this flow that's so easily you could just jump into it and then here we are we're flowing.
Well, yeah, the flow is happening once again. We resist it simply because of this idea I am the body, and the egoic mind that emerged from that has a different view of the world that it keeps trying to force experience into that view, and it doesn't fit. And it just wonder, well, why isn't it working? Well, we don't question the view. We question, well, why can't I make it work? Well, because you cannot force that square peg into the round hole. You can't do it. Well, our model is wrong. It's just the classical illusion, and I use this example a lot of the mirage in the desert. The desert's there, the sand, the heat, the sun, the sweat, the thirst, the heat rising from the sand that distorts the air. That's all there. The mirage isn't. We project upon what is there our beliefs. And as a result, we miss what's actually there. We're not seeing what's there, even though it's staring us right in the face. The illusion of the sun going around the earth, which was believed by medieval people. We think, everyone believed that. It's not true. China didn't believe it. The Chinese, the ancient Indians, didn't believe it. The Aztecs didn't believe it. It was just us in the West that thought the Earth was flat, and we praise ourselves for finally figuring it out 10,000 years after everybody else. But I digress. But you could see it's an illusion. You could see how one could mistake it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look any different now that we know that we're moving and not the sun.
Yes.
It doesn't look a bit different to us. And that's the nature of an illusion. It's a misperception of what's actually there. The I am the body thought creates a misperception of experience.
Yes.
And we think we're experiencing another, and in fact, we're only experiencing consciousness as itself.
And what you said earlier about fitting it into a model, because that's maybe what we are so used to thinking, that we've embodied that thought. You just remind me of the mirage. I have to come up a little bit of a hill at the top of my street. And every time I came to this hill, I was like, why does that squirrel always run out at the same place at the same time when I was like, what is this thing doing? And in fact, it was never a squirrel. It was that mirage look. It's where the heat waves, the waves were just coming and meeting over the top of the hill. Cause I was like, man, that squirrel just always running out in front of me. But my belief is that when I'm driving, I am constantly like, oh my gosh, please, I don't want to hit an animal. So it influences
Yes.
what my mirage is.
Correct.
And so, yeah.
Kids seeing monsters in the closet
Yes.
in early morning hours. Yeah. They actually see it, because that's what the mind does. The mind is always trying to find a form. And if there isn't one, it'll take what little information it has and make one.
Yes, the mind is always trying to find a
And
form.
of course, if you're in the desert and you're dying of thirst, your mind is trying to find water.
Yes.
And so it's going to see it, right? Or it's going to see Jesus in the toast, right?
I love that.
The face in the cloud.
Yes. And I love that, because if the mind is always trying to find the form, that's why when you do the self-inquiry, you ask us to, or guide us to at first say, forget everything. What is it you're feeling? And so if we're sticking with our dying death theme here, and all the happy things around it, is that the best place is like, how does that feel? How do you feel about someone else transitioning and getting ready for the thing? So is it that maybe that's our place to begin?
Yes. The feeling is the right direction. It's not the ultimate truth, but but the feelings are immediate and right now. They are, and they're purer, right? The practice is being with the feelings without the story about the feelings, which eventually gets you to the point where you can see that the feeling and the story are not inexorably linked. That the connection between them is actually arbitrary and just a result of conditioning. And so the story becomes of less importance, and the feeling then is allowed to freedom to reveal itself. And if you follow that far enough, you go beyond even feelings to the most subtle feeling of all, which is I am, and you can go beyond that to the absolute self.
Oh, I love that. The most subtle feeling is I am. That's beautiful.
Yes.
And with that feeling, I'd love to take it to our questions, comments during our, well, we used to have recess. I've kind of abandoned recess. I apologize, everybody.
Well, you haven't abandoned it. We just haven't produced a new program in a while. A new product we were hawking.
That's right. Yeah, we're not going to sell you here, folks.
But any day now. Next week's show we will. Next week's show we will. Yeah,
yes,
that's brand new. Yes.
So with that, here on Homeschool Live, as we thank everybody for being here with us. We love everybody that shows up and has their comments and questions. And I really thought this is going to be quite the little topic here. So I'll go back to the beginning, saying hello. So on Homeschool Live, this is our shifting over Facebook user. I've heard somewhere that if you have a mantra which you have embedded in your subconscious by repetition, it assists you in your transition after death. Thoughts, GP?
Yes. Well, remember, whatever's dominant, whatever is our kind of our dominant point of view, our dominant view of things, is going can persist on a level that's just not the more mundane everyday stuff. Right? Deep, very deep held beliefs can become awesome. They become an influence at a level that transcends an individual life and can go from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. We don't normally think of that because we think of ourselves as the body and an individual person. So there's my conscious, my subconscious, and my unconscious, right? And even Freud, people interpret, or not Freud, Jung, people interpret his thing about unconscious, the collective unconscious. He wasn't referring to a unified field of one consciousness. He was referring to that which is just common to all human beings. That there are certain elements of, what he called archetypes, which are present in every single human being. So he didn't see it as this interconnection of a single consciousness. When you get down to the level that I call energetic, it is not of the body or the mind. It is the mind, the body, the emotions, and all experience, including an individualized life, emerges from this place. And where there's an enormous amount of effort, emphasis on a certain thing, it can actually penetrate and become a part of the energetic substructure, which in Buddhism is called a repository consciousness. And because of the content of that, in the Hindu, it's the vasanas, and it becomes part of the energetic essence that is creating forms, right? And that persists. So if there's any kind of practice, like a meditation, but any kind of practice that has become really, really implemented deeply into your life, it's going to penetrate that and be an influence further on. It's not the kind of thing that you can like adopt a mantra because you find out you're going to die and hope it's going to have a good effect. It's not that kind of thing. It will actually reflect wherever the predominant focus of your attention is. And that's what a mantra is. It is a conscious focusing of attention on a particular thing for the purpose of disciplining the mind. And I mean, if I'm a Wall Street broker and all I think about is money, that's my mantra. Right? I'm focused completely on that. That's the most important thing. I exclude everything else. And that's going to create an energetic pattern that is going to carry on. That energy of greed does persist. And it will have to eventually flip into its opposite at some point. First, by suffering, of course. and then it will go the other direction, and then it'll flip back again. And it always goes back and forth until we find that we're not the body and that we are freed from both sin and virtue. Because there's nobody to be sinful or virtuous. And now you see that you simply are the awareness of those qualities, and now you are free of them. And that's how you step out of karma. And at that point, it's a completely different relationship when the body is left.
I thought that was absolutely, what a fabulous question, because that brought about an answer, like a lesson there that was so like mind blowing a little bit. And I did picture again that infinity of the flow to flip. You'll do this side, then you'll do the side, but then there's a recognition in there. Very beautiful. That was deep. Thank you, Facebook user. Oh, is that the same? I don't know if I'm just gonna kind of go through the question.
We can't tell if it's the same Facebook user. Yeah, you can't really tell. I think it is.
I was going to be sneaky ass lost there. I often ponder why people struggle with the idea of no life after death, but can't fathom the concept of the eternity of time that passed before they were born. Oh, that's funny. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we don't think about that. What about that? Yeah.
I was like, I think, oh, wait.
But if you look, no matter which direction you look, what you find is there's just a place beyond which you can remember or imagine.
Yes.
And that's really it. That's really that's the realm of our experience. What happened before you're born the most honest thing we can say is, I don't know. And what will happen after you die? The most honest thing we can say is, I don't know.
I don't know.
Right? Now, I can say that I know, but it's been extrapolated simply out of just an enlightened insight and and some degree of just simply reasoning, right? And the willingness to question the dominant assumptions about life and death, right?
Mm.
And treat them as assumptions that can be scrutinized like any good scientist would.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny that word. I
And
like that
actually,
word
there was a question further down. So yeah, Jerry said, I have a
scientist.
question. Why do scientists think that consciousness is something the brain does? If consciousness is a result of evolution, it still doesn't explain why there has to be consciousness. And it's a fabulous question. Um, Science has adopted, um, really going back to about the 1930s, after Einstein and the quantum guys, Niels Bohr and Max Planck, um, had made this stunning discoveries that they did, and really kind of, and was it Schrodinger, yeah, the uncertainty principle, that the viewing of something influences it, that it's really impossible for us to know, right? Because our very presence influences. So we can never actually experience anything objectively. Well, that was kind of thrown out the window, and science has kind of adopted this idea. And I even heard Richard Dawkins say that, well, we know how it all works. It's just a matter. We'll find the structures and the details later. So there's just kind of this assumption, which is really more ideological than it is scientific. Um, but of course, science and the Enlightenment saved us from just the incredible stupidity and abuse of power of the superstition of the church, right? Which was dominating things and destroy the library at Alexandria. I mean, all sorts of horrible, horrible things that they did to maintain this ignorance, and so it's just kind of gotten into this position, and while there are those extreme materialists like Richard Dawkins and many others, just so it's got to be some kind of materialistic process. But many look at it and go, "There's something different about consciousness. Where is it?" Right? I mean, at what point is it? The I isn't consciousness. There's this thing called consciousness, and it really is the great problem of science. It cannot explain self-awareness.
Mm.
It cannot explain sentience. So it assumes it must be some kind of construct of matter, because the materialistic model will not allow for the thought that something could exist that is non-physical. That there could be existence that it has nothing to do with matter. Well, it verges on it all the time. That everything that exists is really just a condensation of empty space. I mean, that's about it. It's pretty close. I mean, it's like, what? So there's nothing. Stuff emerges. So it's really quite a fascinating thing to look at, because if it is a function of matter, if it is simply that, well, then there really is no self. It is just a functioning. It's totally robotic, but there's this element of the self-awareness of the robot, which doesn't fit any of those models. And there's many scientists and educated people, not necessarily scientists, like Bernardo Kastrup is one. He's not that kind of a scientist, but I mean, he's got a PhD in a couple of different things. And Rupert Sheldrake. There's a few of them that are saying, not so, that are perfectly willing to consider the idea of consciousness as the substance of the universe, which produced matter, and not the other way around. And again, it's one of those illusions, right? It's like, so the idea of it being material is projected on all of experience and interpreted as if it was material. And then again, of course, it would seem to fit if it seems to fit them all, right? But you could as easily take the opposite position, that it's all consciousness, and it's just as palatable. It's just not being examined because of the ideological preference, and it is ideological. And the beautiful thing is that if I'm going to study physics, I'm going to have to get a lot of degrees and a lot of education, and I didn't do very well at school. So the thing about consciousness is it doesn't require that, because it's you, and nobody's more of an expert on you than you. So you don't need any special letters after your name to explore consciousness as the substance of the universe. And so why they think that is simply because they have adopted this model and decided that that was the final word. And now it's been a matter of trying to make all experience fit into that model, which is, of course, exactly the opposite of what science is supposed to be about. But there's no such thing, and no such thing as a human activity that can't get stuck in some ideology. So, if that answers it for you, James.
Thank you. Yes. And it brought it right back to, the mind is always trying to find form.
Yes, it's always trying to find form and causation outside of itself.
Yes. And now this is a new name. A fiber in the fabric of a life has commented, with ego death, I realize that there is no death. There is, did we just realize there's no death? Because there is only this. It's beautiful.
Absolutely true. Yeah. I recognize the name. He's been in satsang.
Okay.
Show.
Yes,
I have
actually.
seen him.
Thank you for saying that. So Satsang, everyone. So today's Tuesday, but if you wanted to join UP on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, I guess you're everywhere. Well, yes, just YouTube. You can join Satsang, where you put your questions and comments, and GP sits there for 2 hours, and just like this, with like this kind of portion here without a theme. So Tuesdays, Om School has a theme. Satsangs are coming together and discussing. Mary, did something happen at a juncture in so-called time that has created the illusionary world? Oof, there we go.
Yeah.
Mary?
Yes, the thing that happened was the belief I am the body. Don't look at it as a historical thing that's somewhere along the line for all humanity, because that's just a myth. That's just a thought in your mind. Only look for it for you. Right? Where did your illusory world come into being? And it was very early in life when the thought emerged, I am the body. The I am was there. The sense I am was there. That's been there. Your whole existence is a human form. I mean, of course, right? Your parents didn't give you that, right? They didn't say, "Oh, by the way, you are." Oh, thank you. I mean, you just knew, but simply because of the influence around you and experience, it just kind of triggered, "I am the body," and in that moment, all of the body's desires, the body's fears, the body's destiny, the body's interest, the body's preference became my interest, my preference, my identity, my destiny. Right? It never was, but it got taken on, and that was the moment it happened. That's the thing that happened at that juncture in quote. Matter of fact, at that juncture, time was created. It didn't exist prior to that because there were no objects, there were no forms. I was not a body. I was just undifferentiated consciousness. The moment I became a body, I had form. Everything else had form. Time and space came into existence.
That was awesome. I like that. And that actually flows into how the backwards, now the opposite way of that. How does an enlightened being or highly evolved being drop their body consciously, like some yogis do? So here we go. We know when time started, when it was created, was when we adopted that belief. And now how do we put it back up for adoption somewhere else? How do we drop that?
Yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. It's the truly enlightened being. There's a lot of yogis that do a lot of things, and they're not truly enlightened beings. They have just they have evolved a lot of yogic power or siddhis around the material world because they don't see it as material. but there's very much a sense of being a person there manipulating the world. And that's kind of a different thing altogether. The sage, the true enlightened being, doesn't consciously or unconsciously leave the body. They left their body at the moment of becoming the fully enlightened master. The body for them was gone. There was no such thing as a body. And therefore the residue of their of that particular karmic pattern that made up the body, right? It just ran its course and eventually just faded away. But that's what the meaning of the word nirvana is that Buddha used. It's a Sanskrit word, and it means and it refers to a flame that simply ran out of fuel. Flame goes out because it ran out of fuel. And this is the karma. While we're thinking of it as my karma, then I'm like engaged consciously or unconsciously in how it plays itself out. But since it's not my karma, it's simply the karma form, and I am not that. It will just kind of fade away, and you can see it coming. You know, and they have absolutely no resistance to it. As as Nisargadatta put it, referring to his enlightenment, he says, "I let my human life fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am."
Ah.
He also said, "I am that principle which beholds the birth and dissolution of the universe." And so everything, you're just witnessing the coming and the going. And when you're not identified with it, so it's very easy to see, oh, all right, this is it.
That was perfect, actually. Thank you for that question, because it, again, you guys are just doing this magically, or I'm seeing the threads here. Jay was asking, and I'm shortening and condensing it. Is there a particular time where we can welcome, into the world, into the body, and when the time is for passing and ceremony to say, okay, wait, we're going to wait till this time because it's a luckier or more spiritual or more honorable time to have this funeral and and celebrate or mourn, because when you just said we are just witnessing the coming and going, is it for us that we need to send off, say goodbye, allow that body, let go, or is there a time? Is it for the person, the being alive, or the soul to end?
Well, there's different traditions that approach it in different ways. Like, going crossing the bardo in Tibetan Buddhism. There's all sorts of rituals that are done on this side. And as a matter of fact, there's a monk that's with the dead body for the full 49 days. Okay, you're at this point in the bardo. This is what's happening. Literally speaking to them. This part of the preparation for death is what to do in between in that 49 days, because within that period of time you have the opportunity to let go of rebirths.
Oh.
And then, so other traditions have it has to be a certain way. With some, both in some forms of Buddhism and in Hinduism, they'll consult the astrological chart as to where the best place is to do it and the best time, so that the cremation takes place at the right time. They do that in Tibetan Buddhism, and will watch the direction the smoke goes, because that tells them where the next incarnation is going to be. There's a lot of signs. If it's a lama, if it's one of the bodhisattvas who's going to come back to help humanity, and they have to find him. That's part of the job. And so there's all sorts of these clues and stuff they look for as to where he will be born again. The Dalai Lama was found that way from the previous Dalai Lama, and then they have a little test to see that it's him. So if you're looking at it from the purely non-dual point of view, there can't be any significance to it, because nobody's ever born and nobody ever dies. It is at that level a concession to the human mind, and any concession that elevates the human mind makes it more malleable and more willing to let go of the egoic mind. Let go, which means let go of itself, is of great value. But ultimately, it is seen that I'm not, I am not being born, and I am not dying, which means that this process of birth and death is simply a cycle of transformation. It doesn't exist at all because there's nobody being born and nobody is dying. There's just this perpetual, constant transformation of form that is the manifest world. And eventually that's even seen to be the self-awareness of self-awareness. That it's the self pondering itself makes this endless stream of unfolding forms that are not in and of themselves an entity. The only thing that actually exists is the self. Therefore, nothing dies and nothing is ever born. There is no death, there is no karma.
Yes, beautiful. I think the questions, we have some comments we can thank for and share. But that was, I knew I was going to drop that. I think that was the most beautiful way to close that, is that, so there's no preparing, there is no making sure that this and this and that. We have our physical earthly duties or promises or fulfillments that we can. However, for us, for all, there is nothing to be done, to do.
Yes, and when one comes to that in the heart, it then it has power. If one comes to that just in the mind, you get confused. Well, there's nothing to do and no place to go and nowhere to do, and it can be very, very confusing. You've got to arrive at this place in the heart where it's seen so deeply that it actually enhances everyday human life. It removes the confusion. It redeems life. It doesn't hang you out to dry. And it isn't dry or cold or there's nobody here, there's nothing to do. There's nobody here, but there's everything here. There's not a personal entity here. There's the infinite soul, the infinite love, the infinite power, the infinite singularity. That is here, and it's very real. It's just what's imaginary is a bunch of individual beings. We've divided being into beings, and we see each other as separate. When that disappears, there's nobody here. More accurate, there's nobody here but me.
Beautiful. Well, I love that, and I appreciate that, and I know that everybody's too. And if I say this, not even Ava, it's Eve? Ava, did I say it right?
Ava, you got it. You got it.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you. GP's
Well
meditation, the eternal moment between, I know what you're talking about there. It was very helpful in this topic. There was a time when she did know it by heart. Now she probably doesn't, but still sometimes comes back to it. And perhaps what we'll do is we'll put that in the comments below. This is something that you've done. Do I want to call it a meditation? It is
it's a guided meditation.
a
Yeah.
guided meditation.
It's a pondering of it's a pondering where you kind of suspend reason and you go try to extend your intuition out to what would that moment actually be like when all of this has fallen away. I don't have contact with anyone. Whatever was unresolved remains unresolved. And I'm going to be in that position there. As it fades, which it will, there will still be there's opportunity there for resolution. Because you'll be seeing it now. You'll be seeing your life, right? Not in time anymore. So it won't be this. You won't have to review 80 years or something like that, right? Because in this, you're in a timeless place. But you will be seeing it from a place where all the tension is gone, all the angst is gone, all the fear is gone, all of the things that we deal with on our daily life, all the desires and fears and anticipations and ups and downs are all gone. So imagine just this state of complete and total quiet. And from here, you're looking at this experience, getting ready to completely let it go. And of course, this is a timeless space, right? We may say, so how long does it take? A year, 10? There's no time there. A second, a million years are identical.
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That was so perfect. I'm going to make sure that as soon as this gets uploaded, that we will add that in the comments. So if you're watching this, check down below for this. They can link in and just enjoy that and just see where it takes you. Because as Eva. Oh, I did it wrong. I knew that. Oh, I tricked you. Sorry. For this was a very important thing for her. So thank you for bringing that up and reminding me as well. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, GP Walsh, for being here with us, and Homeschool Live for having this awesome time of lessons and teaching. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.